This entry was missing something, and I'm going to show you in one part video how I transformed it. Now, unlike my previous projects, this one doesn't require much for demo. And again, I always recommend to tape it out because what I had on paper is not what I finalized on the wall. When we built this home, we really wanted it to be a place that was welcoming to all. And when you walked in, you felt like you were part of our family. This cutout tool was amazing, and it did not crack the tile. When I started this project, I also found out that my grandma was sick with stomach cancer, and she sadly passed away 2 weeks later. So I decided to dedicate this build to her. I always welcomed everyone into her home with open arms, and I hope to be able to do the same with our house. This tile popped off too easily off the floor, which is slightly concerning. It was time to start building. I have to hype myself up because I know that I'm in for the long haul now. I cut some 2x4 for the base, and this is where the build really starts to take shape. The reason why we did cut out the tile instead of building on top is because we might replace the flooring later down the road, and it would be easier just to pull it from the front of the cabinets rather than try to cut it from underneath. And as you can see, these cabinets are actually very shallow, so I actually don't have back supports on them. I am attaching them straight to the studs using pocket holes on the top of the cabinet. This is a method I have never tried before, but I think it's going to work. Now, this big cabinet is quite large. It is about 5 feet by 4 feet, and I am as stubborn as a mule, and I could not wait for somebody to help me put this up. I don't recommend this method, but it did work. Now, whenever I do these builds, I'm always in amazement of what I've been able to accomplish in the last 2 years. Now, because I'm removing the bench from the other side of the wall and putting in a table, I needed another bench. This is sort of a floating style bench, but it is attached to the side of the cabinets as well as the studs. Although very thin, it is very strong. My stubbornness kicked in again, and I was determined to get these shelves up on the top. And once those were up, it was time to start trimming out the sides of the cabinet. As you can see, the wall slightly bows, so leaving a little bit of a gap with the cabinet, but I will fix that later with the trim work. Could have scribed it as well. My intern decided he needed a little bit of a play break, which happened a lot during this build, which kind of slowed me down. Now, originally I wasn't going to have backing to this cabinet, but because of the slightly janky wall, I needed to hide the gap a bit more. And it didn't cost me anything because I had all these leftover boards from when I did board and batten. I had the electrical moved on this wall, so now it's finally time for me to get this cabinet up as well. Again, don't be stubborn like me and use your boot to lift the cabinet. Here you can see how I'm putting in the pocket holes into the studs from the top. I love how these cabinets are looking. They are shallow, as I had mentioned, but it will work for what we have planned. And it's really cool seeing this project come 360 because this was the first project I had ever done is this coat rack. I recruited my 4-year-old to fill all the pin nail holes because she fits so perfectly into this cabinet. Now, I got slightly annoyed at this part of the project because I did want to spray prime it, and I spent over 2 hours taping off the area only for my sprayer not to work correctly, and I did find out eventually that it was missing a part. So I painstakingly rolled the entire project. Spraying will always give you the smoothest finish, but there's nothing wrong with rolling. Just make sure you have a quality brush and a foam roller. I'm using one of my favorite colors for this build, Evergreen Fog by Sherwin-Williams in the finished semi-gloss. Now that that was all finished, it was time to finally get working on this bench. I'm using leftover maple for this, and I wanted to have that seamless look, so I did 45 all the edges. The wall was slightly bowed where this piece had to go in, so I did have to beat out the wall. You can see all the drywall on the floor. Some would have left it, but I really wanted to make sure that this was flush with the front of the cabinets. I used one of my favorite all-time stains, Weathered Wood by Sanson, and now it was time to get started on this slat wall. I wanted a wood-on-wood look, which personally I had never seen before, so it was time for some trial and error. For this, I'm using a 1/4-inch birch plywood as my backer. Ceiling is not straight at all. This time I did decide to scribe it though. Wanted it to have a perfect fit. The second piece of plywood was a little more challenging to get in, and yes, there will be a seam, but I will hide that with the slats, as long as my math is correct. For the slats, I'm actually using a door trim. It was the cheapest available, but it also has a really nice smooth finish, and had some variations in the wood tone to give it some character. I spaced the slats with 3/4-inch spacer. Thankfully, to my surprise, the one slat covered that seam perfectly. I seriously love how this wood-on-wood look is turning out. Once this wall was finished, it was time to start working on the cabinets again. I had to build a second coat rack to put into the second cabinet because I had only made one when I first started my DIY journey. Then it was onto the doors. Now, with every single project, I have always built doors, but for this one, because of the scale of them, I did order these from the cabinet store. I am so surprised at how fast these actually came, and you can pick what type of wood that you want to use for it. I highly recommend that if doors intimidate you, check out the cabinet store. Their turnaround is quick and their quality is fantastic. My 4-year-old wanted to help paint, and I said, why not? Although I made sure to do the final coat, just to ensure it was a smooth application. But she was so excited to be able to do this. Now, here's something unexpected that I did not plan to do for this build. I could not find any handles that I loved for the scale of these doors, so I ended up taking leftover maple trim and built my own handles. And the scale and width is perfect for this. So let me remind you where we started. After 4 long months, this is how my entry is now. So happy with how it turned out. Hope that you join me for the next DIY project.